It was a day like no other in the peaceful village of Zundara. The sun shone brighter, the winds danced softly through the trees, and the entire village buzzed with excitement. Every home was decorated with colorful fabrics and fresh flowers. The air smelled of roasted meat, sweet honey cakes, and fresh herbs. Today was the wedding day of Lina and Kalo, a love story that had touched every heart in the village. People spoke of it like a tale from the gods. Lina, the orphan girl with a heart full of gold, was finally becoming the wife of Kalo, the brave and kind son of Chief Dunobi. It was a wedding that even the birds seemed to sing about. Lina was not from a royal family. She had no riches, no grand name, no bloodline to boast of, but she had something more powerful, a pure heart. She had spent her life helping others, offering a smile to the sad, food to the hungry, and hope to those who had none. Everyone loved her. Her kindness had made her more beautiful than the most adorned princess. Her eyes sparkled with warmth, and her words soothed like morning dew. She had won the hearts of the people, and most importantly, the heart of Kalo. Kalo, despite being the chief's son, was not driven by pride or status. He was admired for his strength, wisdom, and compassion. He had many royal maidens chasing him from neighboring villages, daughters of chiefs, princesses of noble blood. But Kalo chose Lina. He didn't care about the throne or traditions. He had said it clearly to the elders, "I will marry the one my heart chooses, not the one your rules choose for me." Many had tried to change his mind, but Kalo stood firm. To him, love was more powerful than lineage. As the wedding began, guests flooded into the royal courtyard. They came dressed in their finest robes and ornaments. Elders from nearby villages arrived with gifts and blessings. Children ran around joyfully, singing songs and dancing. The courtyard was glowing with golden fabrics, sweet-scented oils, and baskets of fresh fruit and honey. Traditional horns blew in rhythm with the drums. Everyone clapped, laughed, and celebrated. It felt like a dream. Lina walked into the ceremony wearing a simple yet elegant dress stitched by the village women. Her hair was braided with beads, her smile bright and peaceful. When Kalo saw her, his eyes filled with emotion. He held her hand gently, and together they stood before the people, ready to begin their new life. There was nothing but joy in the air. But while the world rejoiced, one heart remained dark. In a quiet corner, away from the crowd, Kalo's cousin Tifari stood watching. His face was cold, his eyes sharp. He said nothing, but his heart was boiling with anger. He had always wanted Kalo's place, the respect, the power, and now, even Lina. He couldn't accept that a simple orphan girl had won the heart of a future chief. Jealousy grew inside him like a fire. He clenched his fists and muttered under his breath, "This wedding will not end in joy. That girl does not belong here." Unseen by anyone, a shadow had entered the celebration, a shadow that would soon turn joy into fear, laughter into screams, and love into a test of fate. While the whole village was celebrating the love story of Kalo and Lina, Tifari's heart was drowning in bitterness. He couldn't hide his jealousy anymore. Every time someone praised Kalo or admired Lina's beauty and humility, Tifari's envy burned deeper. He believed he was the one who deserved the honor, the respect, the title, and even Lina. In his eyes, Kalo had stolen the life that should have been his. That rage twisted his heart until he could no longer bear it. 3 nights before the grand wedding, while the villagers slept peacefully, Tifari slipped out of Zundara under the cover of darkness. He traveled far, beyond the hills and across the river, until he reached the forbidden lands near Mount Tarima. It was a place most feared, a place where whispers of the past still echoed, where even birds refused to sing. There, in a crumbling, hidden hut, lived Ushoro, the old sorcerer who had once brought shame upon the royal family and had been banished by Chief Dunobi himself. Ushoro was a shadow of a man, his back bent like a withered branch, his skin pale like ash, and his eyes glowing faintly under the moonlight. His mouth curled into a wicked grin when he saw Tifari approaching. "You come crawling like a rat in the night," Ushoro rasped. "I need something powerful," Tifari said, his voice low and bitter. "I want to ruin Kalo's life. I want Lina to suffer. I want everything to burn." Ushoro chuckled, his rotten teeth showing through cracked lips. "You speak of destruction, but you don't know the price you're asking to pay." "I don't care," Tifari snapped. "I'll pay anything." Ushoro hobbled to a dusty old shelf and pulled out a small carved idol, wrapped tightly in crimson cloth. Its eyes were dark, hollow, and haunting. He placed it in Tifari's hands with a strange look of satisfaction. "This," Ushoro whispered, "is an idol of cursed awakening. Place it under their wedding seat during the ceremony. It will unlock a curse hidden in your bloodline, one that has slept for generations." Tifari paused. "Will it affect me?" Ushoro tilted his head and gave a slow, eerie laugh. "Curses do not choose. They spread like wildfire. But you'll see. Fate always reveals the truth in time." Tifari stared at the idol, its energy cold and heavy in his palm. But he didn't care about warnings or consequences. He was blinded by his own jealousy. He thought he could control what he was about to unleash. As he walked away from Mount Terima, the wind howled louder and clouds gathered over the sky. But Tifari only smiled. He returned to the village and carefully placed the cursed idol inside an elegant gift box. It was wrapped in golden fabric, with a ribbon so fine no one would suspect a thing. He planned to present it as a wedding gift and secretly slip it beneath Kalo and Lina's ceremonial seat. His heart beat with wicked satisfaction. He imagined the moment chaos would break loose, how people would panic, how Lina's happiness would shatter, and how Kalo's life would crumble before everyone's eyes. Tifari was sure he had outsmarted them all, but what he didn't know was that the curse he planned to use was older than he imagined, and far more dangerous than he was prepared to face. The wedding celebration was at its highest peak. Laughter filled the air, drums echoed with joy, and the smell of roasted meat and sweet spices lingered in the wind. Guests were still arriving with gifts and blessings, singing praises for the newlyweds. Everyone felt they were witnessing a fairy tale. Kalo and Lina sat side by side on the ceremonial throne, glowing with happiness, surrounded by love and admiration. Just then, a group of servants entered the courtyard, carrying a shimmering golden box, wrapped in fine silk and tied with a ribbon of deep red. It sparkled under the sunlight, drawing the attention of every eye in the courtyard. A tag on it read, "A blessing from distant friends." Kalo smiled and leaned forward. "Another gift?" he said with amusement. "Open it! Open it!" the guests chanted cheerfully, clapping their hands in excitement. Kalo reached out to untie the ribbon, while Lina leaned in beside him, smiling. But the moment the box opened, the cheer in the air vanished. Inside lay something strange, something dark and heavy. It was a small idol, carved from twisted black wood. Its eyes were made of red beads that glowed unnaturally. Strange ancient markings covered its body, and it carried a strange, suffocating energy that seemed to push the air out of the room. The moment Elder Taban, the village seer, caught a glimpse of it from afar, his face turned pale. He stood up slowly, a deep frown forming across his forehead. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. His spirit felt it before his voice could explain it. But before he could speak a word, Kalo suddenly froze. His hands began to shake violently. His body tensed, and his eyes rolled back into his head. Then, out of nowhere, he screamed. A loud, terrifying scream that silenced every drum, every song, every laugh in the courtyard. He collapsed from the throne, hitting the ground with a heavy thud, and began convulsing uncontrollably. Gasps erupted. Panic swept through the crowd like wildfire. Children began crying. Guests backed away in horror. Some fainted. Musicians dropped their instruments. The dancers stood frozen. The joy that had filled Zundara moments ago was now replaced with fear and confusion. Lina screamed, rushing to her husband, tears already streaming down her face. "Kalo! Kalo! What's happening to you? Wake up! Please, wake up!" But in the chaos, another voice rose, sharp and angry. "It's her!" shrieked Lady Imbara, Kalo's mother, pointing at Lina with trembling fingers. "She brought this evil. She cursed my son. Get her away from him." "No, I didn't do anything. I swear I didn't," Lina cried, her voice cracking in desperation. But no one listened. The people, confused and scared, turned their eyes on her. Fear made them blind. Whispers turned to accusations. "She must have brought that idol. She's not from a noble family. She's always been too quiet, too mysterious." And before she could defend herself again, guards stormed in. Without mercy, they pulled Lina away from Kalo's side. She kicked, screamed, begged them to let her go, but it was useless. They dragged her through the courtyard, as guests stared with suspicion and fear. The wedding that was supposed to be a celebration of love had now turned into a nightmare. The cursed gift had done its job, and the real villain, Tifari, stood in the crowd with a satisfied smile, watching the chaos he had planted unfold before his eyes. The courtyard that had once echoed with laughter was now filled with whispers, suspicion, and fear. The sight of Kalo shaking on the ground, the cursed idol lying before him, had shaken the entire village. Lady Mbara, overwhelmed with fear and anger, wasted no time. She stood tall before the elders and shouted, "We must not wait another moment. Call for the ancestral ritual. We must find the truth before darkness consumes us all." Chief Danobi nodded solemnly, and a sacred fire was lit in the middle of the courtyard. Elder Taban, the oldest and wisest seer in Zundara, stepped forward with trembling hands. He slowly picked up the strange idol wrapped in red cloth and studied it closely. His eyes widened in horror. "This is no ordinary object," he said gravely. "It carries the mark of the cursed spirits from Mount Tarima. This is not a gift, it's a weapon, a cursed object meant to awaken a blood curse that has slept for centuries." A gasp rippled through the crowd. People clutched their chests, mothers held their children tighter. The elders looked at one another in fear. "Who dared to bring this into our home?" Chief Danobi's voice boomed, echoing across the courtyard. His face was full of rage and confusion. The crowd remained silent. No one knew the truth, but in moments of fear, it only takes one whisper to become a storm. "It must be Lina," a voice said from the back. "Yes," another one added. "She is not of royal blood. Who knows where she came from? She brought this evil spirit with her," someone else shouted. "She poisoned Kalo's life," Lady Mbara screamed. "I warned you all. I told you she would bring misfortune. Now look at my son, dying on his wedding day." Lina stood in the center, frozen with shock, her eyes wide, her lips trembling. "Please," she begged. "I don't know anything about that idol. I would never hurt Kalo. He's my husband. I love him." But no one heard her cries. In the chaos, love was forgotten. Truth was buried under fear. The elders shook their heads, convinced. The villagers nodded in agreement, their minds clouded by panic. "She must be banished before worse things happen," one of the elders declared. "She must leave this land," another added. Chief Danobi, heartbroken and torn between his role as a father and his duty as a leader, turned away. He couldn't look Lina in the eye. "Let it be done," he said quietly. Before Lina could even process what was happening, guards returned. This time, they did not drag her, but their cold stares and firm grip said everything. She was no longer welcome, no longer a bride, no longer family. That night, Lina walked alone through the gates of Zundara, barefoot and heartbroken, her once beautiful wedding dress now soaked in tears and dust. Her dreams had shattered in a single day. She had come as a bride, full of hope, and was now leaving as an outcast, wrongly blamed, humiliated, and broken. Behind her, the village lights flickered, and drums of mourning replaced the songs of joy. But what no one knew was that the true danger still lingered, and the curse had only just begun. Lina walked aimlessly for days, her heart heavy with pain and betrayal. The once celebrated bride was now a wanderer, her wedding dress torn and stained by dust and tears. She passed through thick forests, climbed rocky hills, and crossed lonely rivers, with nothing but sorrow for company. Hunger gnawed at her belly, and her feet bled from the sharp stones beneath. The nights were cold, and the silence reminded her of all she had lost. One evening, just as her strength was failing, she stumbled upon a small hut near the edge of Gombala village. Her legs gave way, and she collapsed at the doorstep. Moments later, the door creaked open, and an old woman with silver hair and sharp eyes stepped out. She looked down at Lina's fragile body and without hesitation lifted her gently. Mama Ojara was her name, a wise herbalist known across Gombala for her healing hands and powerful spirit knowledge. She tended to Lina's wounds, fed her warm porridge, and wrapped her in blankets. When Lina finally woke up, weak and confused, Mama Ojara sat by her side and said softly, "The world may break you, child, but pain also plants seeds. Now, will you let yours grow?" At first, Lina could barely speak. The betrayal, the humiliation, it still choked her like a storm inside her chest. But Mama Ojara's words settled deep into her soul, like rain falling on dry soil. Day by day, Lina began to heal, not just her body, but her spirit. Mama Ojara started teaching her the ways of the ancestors, the secrets of herbs, roots, and flowers, how to cleanse dark spirits, how to call on light through chants and rituals. Lina's hands grew skilled, her mind sharper, and her soul calmer. With every herb she crushed and every life she saved, she discovered a new strength inside her. Soon, villagers from Gombala began visiting her. At first, it was just a few, children with fevers, farmers with wounds, but word spread quickly about the mysterious young woman with healing hands and a heart full of warmth. People from faraway lands began coming to see her. Lina built a small healing center beside Mama Ojara's hut, a simple place made of wood, clay, and love. They called her Lina the Light. Her presence brought hope to the sick, peace to the troubled, and comfort to the broken. Her eyes sparkled with wisdom, her smile carried calm, and her voice soothed even the most restless spirits. She had become more than the girl who was banished. She had become a symbol of resilience, a beacon of light in a world full of shadows. Yet even in her new life, one shadow remained. At night, when the world went silent, the face of Kalo still appeared in her dreams. Not the cursed day, not the screams, but the smile he once gave her, the vows he once made. Her heart still carried the wound of love, deep, quiet, and aching. But Lina was no longer weak. She had learned how to rise from pain, how to bloom from scars, and how to shine even after darkness. Her journey was far from over. Something inside her knew fate was not done writing her story. Back in the once glorious village of Zundara, a heavy darkness settled over the palace. Kylo, once full of life and strength, lay motionless on his bed, his skin turned pale, his breath shallow, and his eyes blank. Day after day, his condition worsened. The finest healers from every corner of the land were summoned, herbalists, spirit whisperers, bone readers, but none could lift the shadow from his body. He remained trapped in a strange sleep, drifting between life and death. With Chief Denobi too heartbroken to rule and Lady Imbara drowning in grief, Tefari stepped forward, like a vulture circling a wounded prey. He pretended to care, offering to help manage the palace affairs until Kalo recovered. The elders, desperate and confused, agreed. Slowly, Tefari began to tighten his grip on power, replacing guards with his loyal men, changing village laws, and making decisions behind closed doors. He walked around the palace with pride, thinking his plan had succeeded. He believed the throne was already his, but fate was watching, and it was not finished yet. Strange things began to happen. First, the palace livestock started dying, one after the other, without explanation. Chickens, goats, even the royal horses collapsed without wounds or sickness. Then, the village crops began to wither. Green leaves turned yellow overnight, fruits rotted before ripening, and the fields smelled of decay. Farmers cried out in confusion. This had never happened in Zundara before. Birds that once circled the palace skies disappeared. No songs filled the air. Even the royal well, known for its pure water, turned bitter and black. People whispered that spirits had cursed the land. Fear spread like wildfire. The same villagers who had once clapped at Lina's banishment now trembled in fear. Their homes grew cold, their children fell sick, and no healer could explain why. Inside the palace, things grew worse. Lady Imbara began acting strangely. At night, she would scream, saying she saw burning idols chasing her. She tore at her clothes, begged invisible spirits for mercy, and wandered the halls with wild eyes. Servants whispered that she was losing her mind, haunted by the curse she once blamed on Lina. Tefari, too, started to feel the weight of what he had done. His once confident steps became shaky. He heard voices in empty rooms. Shadows moved where there were no people. The idol he had once smirked at in secret now appeared in his nightmares, laughing at him, mocking him. He tried to hide his fear, but his eyes told another story. Every decision he made seemed to backfire. The elders started questioning him. The people began doubting him. The same power he had fought so hard for was slipping through his fingers. Rumors spread across the village. What if it wasn't Lina? What if she was innocent all along? The guilt that had been buried began to rise. People remembered her gentle smile, her kind heart, her love for Kalo. They began to wonder if they had cast out the wrong person. Doubts turned into regret. Regret turned into fear. Zundara was no longer a place of joy and celebration. It had become a land of silence, sorrow, and suspicion. And all the signs pointed to one truth. The curse was never about Lina. It had always been deeper, darker, and closer to the palace than anyone had ever imagined. Elder Taban had seen many strange things in his lifetime, but the chaos that gripped Zundara was unlike anything he had ever witnessed. Deep in his heart, he knew the curse wasn't ordinary, and as he observed the strange events unfolding, Kalo's illness, the dying livestock, the poisoned land, he became more certain that the evil hadn't come from outside the palace, but from within. And one name kept echoing in his mind, Tifari. Late one night, under the cover of darkness, Elder Taban crept silently into Tifari's chamber. His heart pounded as he searched carefully, guided by instincts sharpened over decades. He opened a carved wooden chest and gasped. There, wrapped in crimson cloth, was another idol, twisted, eerie, with the same red-beaded eyes and ancient spirit markings as the cursed gift given at the wedding. It was unmistakable. The curse had come from Tifari all along. Without wasting time, Elder Taban rushed to Chief Denobi's quarters. The old chief sat weakly by Kalo's bedside, his face hollow with grief. "Chief," Taban said firmly, holding out the idol, "I've found the truth. The curse did not come from Lina. It was planted by someone in this very palace, someone from your own bloodline." Chief Denobi's eyes widened in shock. "What are you saying?" "It was Tifari. He brought this evil into your house." Fury boiled in the old chief's chest. Despite his frailty, he stormed into the royal court and summoned Tifari. The entire palace gathered as the idol was placed before him. Tifari's face went pale. He tried to deny it at first, stammering, shaking his head. But under the weight of everyone's eyes, and the truth laid bare, he collapsed to his knees and confessed. "I only wanted him gone," he muttered. "I wanted the throne. I didn't know the curse would destroy everything." "You cursed your own blood!" Chief Denobi roared. "You destroyed this family, this land, for your greed." The court fell into stunned silence. Even the wind seemed to pause in shame. The very man they trusted had betrayed them from within. The people who had blamed Lina now saw the truth. She was innocent all along. But the damage had already been done. Kylo remained unconscious. The village was still cursed, and the spirits had been angered beyond measure. Tifari's selfishness had brought ruin not just upon the palace, but the entire village of Zundara. The elders wept. Lady Imbara fell to the floor, sobbing, realizing the terrible injustice they had done to Lina. Whispers of regret filled the air. The villagers who once cheered for Tifari now turned their backs in disgust. But even with the truth revealed, one painful question remained. Could the curse be undone? Could the spirits ever be calmed? There was only one person who might still hold that answer. The woman they had once cast out. The woman they had wrongly blamed. The woman who now held the power to heal not just Kalo, but the soul of the entire village. Lina, far away in the peaceful village of Gombala, where healing songs floated through the air and hope lived in every corner. News of Zundara's misery finally reached Lina. The people came rushing to her healing center, their faces full of worry. "The palace is cursed," they cried. "Kalo is dying. The land is broken. Only you can save us." Lina's heart trembled, not with anger, but with deep sadness. The same people who once dragged her out in shame were now begging for her help. But Lina was no longer the broken girl they had cast out. She was now Lina the Light, a powerful healer, filled with wisdom and strength. She didn't rise with pride, she rose with grace. The villagers of Gombala, who had come to love and respect her, prepared a royal chariot for her journey back. Flowers were laid in her path, drums played in her honor, and songs of her kindness echoed through the hills. She was not returning as a banished bride, she was returning as a queen in spirit. As Lina's chariot approached the palace gates, the people of Zundara rushed out in awe. The same villagers who once whispered curses now fell to their knees. Even the guards who had dragged her away now bowed their heads in shame. Eyes filled with tears, voices cracked with regret. Lady Imbara ran forward, her clothes in disarray, her eyes red with guilt. She fell at Lina's feet, sobbing. "Forgive me, Lina," she cried. "I was blind. I let my fear poison my heart." Lina gently lifted her up. "I have no hatred in my heart," she said softly. "We all must learn." Without another word, she walked into the palace, quiet, graceful, glowing like a light sent from the heavens. The air changed as she entered. The birds returned to the skies. The bitter wind grew warm. It was as if the spirits themselves recognized her presence. Inside Kalo's chamber, the atmosphere was heavy with sorrow. He lay still, pale and weak, barely breathing. His body had become a shell. The once vibrant prince was now a shadow of himself. Lina stepped in quietly. Everyone stood aside in silence, watching the woman they had once rejected. now become their only hope. She knelt beside Kalo, her fingers trembling slightly. She placed her hand gently on his forehead, closed her eyes, and whispered ancient healing words taught by Mama Ojara. Her touch was calm, but her heart prayed deeply. Moments passed. Then slowly, Kalo's eyelids fluttered. His eyes opened weakly, struggling to adjust to the light. He looked around, confused, until his gaze met hers. "Lina," he whispered, his voice dry and broken. "Is it really you?" Lina smiled, tears filling her eyes. "Yes, my love, I'm here." Kalo's lips curved into a faint smile as his trembling hand reached for hers. A calm warmth filled the room. For the first time in months, hope returned to Zundara. The people outside waited anxiously. And when the news broke, "Kalo is awake! He's alive!" the entire village erupted in joy. Songs filled the air. But this time, they were not just about love. They were about redemption, forgiveness, and the return of the light they had once rejected. Lina had not just healed a man, she had healed an entire kingdom, with nothing but her kindness, strength, and a heart that refused to hate. The sun rose gently over Zundara, casting a golden light that seemed to wash away months of sorrow and pain. The palace courtyard was filled with people, elders, villagers, warriors, children, all gathered in silence for a sacred moment they would never forget. In the center stood Lina, dressed not as a queen in jewels, but in a simple white cloth, glowing with a calm, powerful grace. She held herbs, sacred stones, and ancestral symbols, tools of healing passed down by Mama Ojara, her beloved mentor from Gombala. The air was thick with tension and hope. Lina closed her eyes and began chanting softly, her voice rising with the wind. The cleansing ritual had begun. Smoke from the sacred herbs curled into the sky. Water from the ancestral river was sprinkled around the palace grounds. The earth was blessed, the spirits called, and the curse, slowly, deeply, was pulled from the land like a dark shadow being chased by light. As Lina's hands moved with precision and purpose, a peaceful energy swept through the palace. Birds returned to the trees, the sun grew warmer, and the bitterness in the air faded. The people watched in awe, unable to believe that the same woman they had once cast away was now saving them all. Kalo, who had been weak and lifeless, began to recover almost immediately. His skin regained color, his body found strength again, and his smile returned. The prince who had once been trapped in darkness now stood tall beside Lina, restored not just by medicine, but by love and forgiveness. But not all stories end with healing. Some must end with justice. Tifari, the cousin whose jealousy had nearly destroyed an entire kingdom, was brought before the elders. His eyes were full of shame, his head lowered. The crowd stared at him in silence, their faces filled with anger and disappointment. Chief Denobi stood, his voice heavy with sorrow. "You tried to curse your own blood. You brought darkness to this land. You broke our trust." The punishment was swift. Tifari was stripped of all titles, honors, and privileges. He was no longer a prince, no longer welcome in Zundara. With nothing but a travel sack and his guilt, he was sent into exile, banished forever from the land he once wanted to rule. The people cheered, not with hatred, but with relief. Justice had been served. Karma had spoken. Chief Denobi, his heart heavy with guilt, turned to Lina. His eyes welled with tears as he bowed deeply before her. "You were the daughter we didn't deserve," he said softly, "but you were the one we truly needed." Even Lady Imbara, proud and stubborn, knelt in front of Lina with trembling hands. "Please, forgive me," she whispered. Lina looked at them, not with anger, but with compassion. "I have already forgiven you," she said gently, "but let this be a lesson to all. Never judge what the eyes see. True strength comes from within." The crowd was silent. Every word she spoke echoed in their hearts. Then, she added something that surprised them all. "I did not return to sit on a throne," she said. "I returned to heal my people." And just like that, Lina, once seen as an outsider, became the light that would guide Zundara into a new era, not with power or wealth, but with wisdom, humility, and a heart full of grace. The sun was shining brighter than ever over the village of Zundara. This time, there was no tension, no whispers of curses, no fear in the air, only joy, music, and laughter. Lina and Kalo stood side by side, hands clasped tightly, hearts beating as one. But this was not another grand royal wedding hidden behind palace gates. No, this was a wedding for the people, with the people, in the very heart of the village square. Children ran barefoot with flowers in their hands. Elders danced with wrinkled joy. and villagers of all classes gathered under the open sky to witness something far greater than a royal ceremony. This was a celebration of love, redemption, and unity. The same crowd that had once turned their backs on Lina now sang her name with pride. There were no golden thrones, no diamond crowns, only simple decorations, traditional drums, and pure happiness. Lina wore a white cloth stitched by the women of Gumbala, and Kylo wore beads gifted by the village elders. Their vows were spoken not in whispers behind palace walls, but aloud, with every villager as witness. They promised love, respect, and to serve not just each other, but all the people of Zundara. After the wedding, something remarkable happened. Instead of rebuilding the palace into a fortress of power, Kylo and Lina turned a large section of it into a healing sanctuary. It was named in honor of Mama Ojara, the wise herbalist who had saved Lina when the world turned its back on her. People came from near and far, not for royal favors, but to be healed, to find peace, and to learn from Lina's gentle strength. And Lina, oh, Lina became more than a queen. She became a legend, not because she wore a crown, but because she wore her scars with grace. Not because she ruled with power, but because she touched lives with kindness. Her story spread like wildfire across the lands. People spoke of the girl who was once banished in her wedding dress, the one everyone accused, the one who returned not for revenge, but to heal the same land that rejected her. Even children would whisper her name during bedtime stories. Lina the Light, a symbol of hope, a reminder that no matter how dark the world gets, light always finds a way to shine through. And so, the day that once brought screams of fear became a day that brought songs of praise. The same people who had once doubted her now danced in circles, singing her name with tears of joy. They just got married. 30 minutes later, everyone was screaming. Yes, they were. But now the world wasn't screaming in terror. It was screaming in awe of the woman who turned pain into purpose, rejection into redemption, and brokenness into healing. Lina didn't need a throne. Her heart was her crown. Her kindness was her power, and her love was her legacy. And from that day forward, whenever people spoke of strength, healing, and light, they remembered her, Lina the Light. And if you believe in stories that inspire, in tales that carry powerful lessons and stir emotions deep within, then don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more heart-touching stories, just like this one. Your support helps us keep these stories alive. Thank you for watching. Thank you for feeling. Thank you for believing in light, just like Lina did. See you in the next story.